It's there in the delivery room, that first startled cry piercing the silence. It's there in the boardroom, your heart hammering before you speak. It's there in the hospital corridor, time suspended as you wait for news. Fear arrives uninvited, yet never leaves empty-handed. It carries messages we rarely want to hear. You are not in control. Nothing lasts forever. You are more fragile than you pretend. But what if fear isn't the enemy we've made it out to be? What if it's actually a teacher? Stern, relentless, but ultimately wise. In the Buddhist tradition, fear is not a character flaw or a spiritual failure. It's simply part of being human, part of dukkha, that bittersweet ache woven into the fabric of existence itself. The Buddha never promised to eliminate fear. Instead, he offered something far more radical. He invited us to turn toward it, to meet it with open eyes, to discover the freedom that lies not beyond fear, but right in its heart. Pema Chodron captured this perfectly. Only when we face fear can we begin to see through it. This isn't about becoming fearless. That's a myth sold by motivational posters. This is about becoming free. So, what are the roots of fear, and why do we suffer? Well, picture a child clutching a melting ice cream cone, crying as it drips away. The tears aren't really about the ice cream. They're about the cruel discovery that nothing we love stays exactly as it is. This is where fear begins, in the gap between what we want and what is. Buddhism calls this tanha, the desperate grasping that creates suffering. We cling to our health, our relationships, our plans, our image. We build elaborate fortresses around what we cherish most. And then we spend our lives in terror that the walls might crumble. But here's the twist. They're already crumbling. They always have been. All conditioned things are impermanent, teaches the Dhammapada. Your body is changing. Your thoughts are shifting. Even this moment, this very breath, will never come again. Fear is what happens when we forget this truth, when we mistake the wave for the ocean itself. Buddhism offers a different way. Instead of fighting the wave, become the depths beneath it. Let fear rise and fall while you remain steady, not because you're indifferent, but because you're anchored in what doesn't change, awareness itself. The Pali word for this is upekkha, often translated as equanimity, not the cold detachment of someone who's given up caring, but the warm steadiness of someone who's learned to love without strangling what they love. I'd like to now share 3 stories from the Buddhist tradition that speak to our relationship with fear. The first is called The Murderer on the Road. The dust hung thick in the afternoon heat as Angulimala stalked through the forest. His name meant finger necklace, earned from the grisly trophies he wore. 999 human thumbs strung around his neck, one short of his dark vow. Fear preceded him like a shadow. Villages emptied at rumours of his approach. Mothers pulled children close. Even hardened travellers chose longer routes to avoid his hunting grounds. But on this day, word reached him of a monk walking his territory. A holy man, they said. Fearless, they claimed. Angulimala's lips curved into a cold smile. Perfect. He set off through the trees, murder singing in his veins. Then he saw him. The monk walked alone. No guards, no weapons, no urgency. His saffron robes moved gently with each step. His pace never faltered, even as Angulimala burst from the undergrowth, blade raised. But something impossible happened. No matter how fast Angulimala ran, the walking monk stayed just ahead. The killer's fury turned to confusion, then to something he hadn't felt in years. Wonder. "Stop!" he finally screamed. "Stop, monk!" The figure paused and turned. The Buddha's eyes held no trace of fear, only compassion so vast it seemed to swallow the very concept of violence. "I stopped long ago, Angulimala," came the gentle reply. "Have you?" The words landed like a physical blow. In that moment, Angulimala saw himself clearly. A man running so fast from his own pain that he'd become pain incarnate. A man so afraid of being hurt that he'd made himself into something that could never be loved. The sword fell from his trembling fingers. The necklace followed. and in the dust of that forest road, a killer discovered what the Buddha had always known. True fearlessness isn't the absence of fear, it's the presence of something larger. The second of our 3 stories is all about a mother's last hope. Kisa Gautami had always been thin. Skinny Gautami, the neighbours called her. But grief had carved her down to something almost translucent. She moved through the streets like a ghost, her dead child pressed against her chest. "Medicine," she whispered to anyone who would listen. "Just a little medicine. He's only sleeping." Some turned away. Others shook their heads sadly. The kinder ones tried to explain what she refused to understand. Finally, someone pointed her toward the Buddha. "If anyone has medicine for death," they said, "it would be him." She found him teaching beneath a banyan tree. The crowd parted as she approached, this wild-eyed mother with her terrible burden. The Buddha's voice was soft as rain on stones. "I can help you, dear one, but first bring me a mustard seed." Her eyes lit up. Such a simple request. "But," he continued, "it must come from a house that has never known death." Gautami nodded eagerly and rushed away. House after house she knocked. "A mustard seed, just one tiny seed. But your family, has anyone ever died here?" The first woman's face crumpled. "My husband last year." The second home, "My mother just months ago." The third, "My son the same age as yours." By sunset, Gautami stood empty-handed at her doorstep. But she wasn't empty. She was full of stories, full of shared tears, full of the terrible, beautiful truth the Buddha had helped her discover. Death wasn't a punishment reserved for her child. It was the common thread connecting every mother, every family, every beating heart. She wasn't alone in her loss. She was part of something vast and sorrowful and strangely comforting. That night, she buried her son, and in letting go, she found what she'd really been seeking all along. Not medicine to deny death, but wisdom to live alongside it. The final tale we'll call The Night of Truth. The tree was ancient even then, its roots deep, its branches wide enough to shelter a seeking prince. Siddhartha sat beneath it as darkness gathered, his back straight, his resolve absolute. He would not rise until truth revealed itself. But he wasn't alone. Mara came first as desire, visions of pleasure, promises of power, everything a prince could want. Siddhartha's breath remained steady. Then Mara returned as doubt. "Who are you to think you can end suffering? What makes you special? You're just a pampered fool playing at wisdom." The attacks grew fierce, armies of demons, storms of terror. The ground itself seemed to rebel. In that cosmic night, every fear that ever haunted a human heart descended on one man. Fear of failure, fear of meaninglessness, fear of being forgotten, fear of the dark truth that maybe, just maybe, suffering really was all there was. But then, so simple it almost seems anticlimactic, Siddhartha reached down. His fingers touched the earth, cool, solid, real. "The earth is my witness," he said. Not to the demons, not to the fears, to himself. "I belong here. I have a right to seek truth. I am not moving." And Mara vanished. Not because the Buddha overpowered him, but because he stopped giving fear the authority to define reality. In that moment of simple contact, skin to soil, he remembered, some things are more fundamental than fear. These 3 stories aren't fairy tales or ancient mythology. They're instruction manuals written in story form. They show us that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's what we do when fear shows up for the meeting. We may not face murderers in forests or demons under sacred trees, but we do face fear. It just wears better clothes now. Fear shows up in the doctor's waiting room, disguised as routine follow-up. It attends every job interview, every first date, every time we hit send on something important. It whispers through social media, through news alerts, through the quiet 3 a.m. math of whether we're falling behind. Fear wears the mask of climate anxiety, of economic uncertainty, of the growing suspicion that we're living through the kind of history future generations will read about with sadness. It speaks the language of what if? What if I'm not enough? What if I've wasted my life? What if the people I love stop loving me back? But underneath the modern packaging, it's the same ancient fear, the terror of impermanence dressed up in contemporary concerns. Take Sarah, a 45-year-old marketing director. For 20 years, she'd climbed the corporate ladder. Good salary, respected title, benefits that made her parents proud. But lately, something else had been climbing too. A restless sense that she was living someone else's life. She wanted to write, to teach, to create something that mattered. Each time the urge surfaced, fear slammed it down. You're too old to start over. Artists are broke and bitter. What will people think when you throw away everything you've built? So she stayed, not because she was happy, but because the fear of change felt bigger than the pain of remaining still. Until one day she tried something different. Instead of running from the fear, she sat with it, meditated with it, asked it questions. What are you trying to protect? What are you so afraid of losing? The answers surprised her. Fear wasn't protecting her career. It was protecting her image of herself as someone who had it all figured out. It wasn't protecting her security. It was protecting her from the vulnerability of admitting she'd been wrong about what she wanted. That conversation with fear didn't make it disappear, but it did something more valuable. It revealed fear as an advisor, not a dictator, someone whose counsel could be heard without being automatically obeyed. Buddhism doesn't ask us to be fearless. It asks us to be fear-wise, to recognize fear as a part of the human experience, not a personal failing. To sit beside it like we would sit beside an old friend who tends toward anxiety, with patience, compassion, and a grain of salt. When we stop fighting fear, something remarkable happens. We discover it's not actually a wall blocking our path. It's a doorway to deeper self-knowledge, to genuine compassion for others who struggle, to the kind of courage that can only come from having walked through the dark and emerged intact. Fear shrinks, not because it disappears, but because we grow larger than it, because we learn to hold it the way the sky holds a storm, fully present to its power but never mistaking it for the totality of what's real. The practices that make this possible aren't complex. They're as simple as Siddhartha's hand touching earth, as direct as the Buddha's steady pace on a forest road, as wise as a mother finally ready to let go. Now, let's get practical. Understanding fear is one thing. Meeting it at 3 a.m. when your mind spirals through worst-case scenarios, that's something else entirely. When your stomach clenches before a difficult conversation, when the world feels too fragile to bear your weight, when anxiety arrives like an unwelcome houseguest who won't leave. Buddhist tradition offers more than philosophy. It offers tools, simple, powerful practices you can use when fear shows up, demanding answers you don't have. Here are 5 ways you can work on your fear using the Buddhist wisdom hard-won over the last 2,500 years. The first is Vipassana, or mindfulness meditation, as our foundation. Deceptively simple, profoundly transformative. You sit, you breathe, you notice what arises. When fear appears, and it will, you don't push it away like a bothersome fly. You don't chase it with stories about why it's here or what it means. You simply notice it. Fear is here. Tightness in my chest is here. Racing thoughts are here. This isn't passive resignation, it's active awareness. By naming fear, you create space around it, a moment of clarity where you're no longer drowning in the experience. You're with it, but not overwhelmed by it, observer and experiencer, held in the same conscious embrace. Thich Nhat Hanh put it beautifully. Feelings come and go like clouds in a windy sky. Conscious breathing is my anchor. Try this right now. Sit comfortably. Close your eyes. Focus on your breath, not controlling it, just following it. When fear or anxiety surfaces, resist the urge to fix or fight. Instead, gently whisper to yourself, "This is fear. It's temporary. It will pass." That awareness alone, The simple recognition that you are not your fear is revolutionary. The second practice is loving kindness, a radical act of self-compassion. Fear has a cruel talent. It makes us turn against ourselves. It whispers that we're weak for feeling afraid, that we should be stronger, braver, more like the people who seem to have it all figured out. Metta or loving kindness meditation offers a different path. Instead of contracting around fear, we expand toward it with compassion. The practice is elegant in its simplicity. You repeat phrases silently, letting them soak into your heart like rain into dry earth. May I be safe. May I be free from fear. May I meet whatever arises with kindness. Then you extend these wishes outward to someone you love, someone neutral, someone who challenges you, and finally to all beings everywhere. May all beings be free from fear. May all beings find peace in the midst of uncertainty. There's a story I love about a Buddhist nun who survived war. For years afterward, PTSD controlled her life. Every unexpected sound sent her spiraling. Sleep became a battleground of nightmares. She tried medication, therapy, avoidance. Everything temporarily helped, but nothing lasted. Until she discovered metta, not directed at others but at her own fear. Each day she sat with her terror and spoke to it like a frightened child. May you be peaceful, may you feel safe, may you be held with love. Slowly, so slowly she almost didn't notice, something shifted. The fear didn't disappear, but it stopped feeling like an enemy and started feeling like a wounded part of herself that needed tending. That's the magic of loving kindness. It teaches us to hold what feels unbearable with love. Third, we have Tonglen, a way of breathing fear into freedom. This practice sounds impossible until you try it. Most of us spend our lives trying to avoid discomfort. Tonglen asks us to do the opposite. Breathe it in. On the inhale, you deliberately imagine drawing in fear, yours and others. On the exhale, you send out peace, calm, relief. Inhale suffering, exhale compassion. It reverses our deepest instinct to push pain away. Instead of building walls against difficulty, we open our hearts to it. We become a transformer of suffering rather than its victim. Picture this. You're about to enter a tense meeting. Instead of armoring yourself with anxiety, you breathe in the nervousness of everyone involved. You feel it fully. The collective worry, the unspoken fears, the weight of what's at stake. Then you breathe out calm, sending peace to every person in that room. You become a source of steadiness, not just for yourself, but for others. This simple reversal transforms fear from an isolating experience into a bridge connecting you to every human who has ever felt afraid, which is to say, everyone. If sitting still in meditation is a challenge for you, you might like to try the fourth practice, which is walking meditation. Sometimes sitting still with fear feels impossible. Your body vibrates with restless energy. Your mind won't settle. Every moment of stillness feels like torture. Walking meditation offers refuge for the unsettled. Choose a quiet path. Even 10 steps back and forth in your bedroom will do. Walk slowly, deliberately. With each footfall, whisper silently, I have arrived. I am home. Each step becomes a prayer, a reminder that this moment, this breath, this simple contact between foot and earth is enough. There's neuroscience behind this ancient wisdom. When we walk rhythmically and mindfully, our brain's alarm system, the amygdala, begins to quiet. The nervous system receives a message. We are moving, therefore we are safe. We are not trapped, therefore we can respond rather than react. Movement gives the churning mind something to follow, while the heart finds its natural rhythm again. Finally, Tara Brach gave us this elegant framework for meeting fear without being consumed by it, called RAIN. RAIN is an acronym. Recognize what's happening, allow it to be there. Investigate with gentle curiosity. Nurture what you find. Let's walk through it with a real scenario. You wake at 2 a.m. with your heart racing, worried about tomorrow's presentation. Recognize, this is performance anxiety, this is fear. Allow. I don't need to push this away or solve it right now. It's okay to feel this. Investigate. Where do I feel this in my body? My chest is tight. My thoughts are catastrophizing. What story am I telling myself? Nurture. Place a hand on your heart. Speak to yourself like you would to a dear friend. It's okay to be nervous. You care about doing well, and that's beautiful. I'm here with you. Rain transforms panic into presence, reactivity into tenderness, a spiraling mind into spacious awareness. You can practice it anywhere, on a train, in a meeting, during a sleepless night. The more you use it, the more natural it becomes. These 5 practices aren't magic pills that eliminate fear. They're something better. They change your relationship to fear itself. From clenched to open, from bracing to breathing, from victim to friend. By now, you might be wondering, why doesn't Buddhism just tell us how to get rid of fear altogether? Because that would be like trying to get rid of gravity or sunrise. Fear isn't a mistake in the human design. It's a feature. What if, just for a moment, you stopped asking, how do I eliminate this fear? And instead asked, what is this fear trying to teach me? That single question changes everything, because when you see fear as a messenger rather than a monster, you start to listen, and you might hear things you've been avoiding for years. I'm afraid of failure because I've confused my worth with my achievements. I'm terrified of losing this relationship because it's become my whole identity. I can't rest because I've built my life around proving I'm enough. Buddhist wisdom teaches that all mental states, fear included, are anicca, impermanent, and anatta, not self. They arise based on conditions. They pass when conditions change. You are not your fear. But fear might be showing you exactly where you're still trapped, where you're clinging to illusions of control, where you're still believing the story that says, if this goes wrong, I'll be nothing. Fear becomes a kind of Dharma bell, ringing to wake you up. Jack Cornfield captured this perfectly. Fearlessness isn't the absence of fear, it's the mastery of fear. And that mastery isn't domination. It's curiosity, compassion, willingness to stand still when everything in you wants to run, to feel the shaking without trying to stop it, to stay soft when the world demands you harden. Here's a practice for the next time fear visits. Ask yourself, what is this fear trying to protect? What would it mean to thank it for caring? What deeper longing is it pointing toward? You might discover that beneath the fear lies something beautiful, a desire for authentic connection, a longing to live fully rather than safely, a reminder that something precious is at stake. Fear doesn't show up because you're broken. It shows up because something matters to you, and that's worth honoring. You can let fear make you smaller, or you can let it crack you open to something larger. Throughout this journey, we've explored how Buddhist wisdom invites us to shift our posture, away from resistance and toward presence. We've seen how fear can become the very ground of awakening, if we're brave enough to meet it directly. Eleanor Roosevelt, no Buddhist but wise in her own way, understood this. She said, "You gain strength, courage, and confidence by every experience in which you really stop to look fear in the face." In Buddhism, that's called turning toward, sitting beneath the Bodhi tree while demons rage, touching earth with one steady hand, saying quietly but firmly, "I'm not moving, I belong here." You don't need to remember every practice we've shared. You don't need to master all 5 techniques. Just choose one. Maybe it's 5 minutes of mindful breathing before bed. Maybe it's a single phrase of loving kindness repeated like a prayer. May I be safe. May I be peaceful. Maybe it's placing a hand on your heart during difficult moments and whispering, "It's okay to be afraid, I'm here with you." Let it be simple. Let it be sincere. Because every moment you meet fear with presence rather than panic is a moment of genuine freedom. Not freedom from fear, that's not the goal. Freedom from the illusion that fear has the final word about who you are and what you're capable of. In that space between fear and your response to it, you discover something extraordinary. You are not smaller than your fear. You are vast enough to hold it, spacious enough to breathe with it, wise enough to learn from it. Fear will always be part of the human experience, but it doesn't have to be the author of your story. You are the one holding the pen. You are the one choosing the next sentence. You are the one deciding whether this chapter ends in contraction or expansion. Fear is not the enemy. It never was. It's a doorway disguised as a wall, a teacher dressed as a tormentor, a reminder that you care deeply about this beautiful, fragile, impermanent life. And now you know how to walk through that doorway, with presence, with compassion, with the quiet confidence that whatever arises, you can meet it